Travis Alden balanced a silver tray in one hand and knocked on the penthouse door with the other, praying his 5-year-old daughter hadn't spilled juice on the couch again while the neighbor babysat her. He heard a soft come in and stepped inside. The suite was massive floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city's skyline, marble floors that echoed under his worn-out shoes, and furniture so sleek it looked untouched. He'd been delivering room service at the Lexington Grand for almost 6 months, but he'd never been this high up, literally or financially. And then he saw her. Sitting barefoot on the couch in a silk robe, legs tucked beneath her like she owned the world, which, judging by the view, she might was the most stunning woman he'd ever seen. "Room service," he said, setting the tray on the glass table. She looked up from her laptop, blinking like she hadn't realized someone had actually walked into the room. "Oh, thank you." Her voice was low and calm, but something about it made his chest tighten. She had this calm power, like she belonged in this place, like she was born to rule. He gave a polite nod and turned to leave. "Wait," she said suddenly, standing. "You forgot the sparkling water." Travis paused. "It wasn't on the ticket, ma'am." She tilted her head. "You always follow the ticket." He gave a tight smile. "Helps keep the job." There was a pause, then she walked over to the tray and picked up a chocolate-covered strawberry. "What's your name?" He hesitated. Travis Alden." She held out the strawberry. "Want one, Travis?" He raised an eyebrow. "I'm not allowed to eat from guests' trays." She stepped closer, holding it out. "Consider it a tip." He stared at her. She was clearly flirting, but people like her didn't flirt with people like him, not unless it was a game. "I should get back," he said. Her smile didn't falter. "Suit yourself." He left, heart pounding. The next night, she ordered room service again. And again the night after that. Always the penthouse, always requesting Travis by name. He tried not to think too much about it. Maybe she was just bored. Maybe she liked messing with him, or maybe just maybe she really did enjoy their short chats about nothing and everything. Because she always asked about his daughter, about his favorite movies, about his opinions on the best pizza in the city. She never told him much about herself. Just a name, Vivienne Cade, and that she was in town on business. He didn't Google her. That felt wrong. But judging by the way hotel staff jumped whenever she entered the lobby and how she once casually mentioned flying in from Tokyo the same morning, she was more than just in business. One night, after a long shift, he found her sitting on the floor of the penthouse with 2 plates of pasta and a bottle of wine. "I figured you're off the clock now," she said. "Sit." "I can't. I've got my daughter at home." She looked up quickly. "You're a dad." "Yeah, Kinsley, she's 5. My neighbor watches her when I work late." Vivienne's eyes softened. "That's really impressive." He laughed. "Impressive? Nah, just doing what I gotta do." She studied him like she was seeing him for the first time. "No, it is. Most guys would have walked away." He shrugged. "She's my whole world." Vivienne didn't say anything for a second, then pushed a plate toward him. "Take it to go. You look like you haven't had a hot meal in days." He took it, but not because he wanted the food. He wanted to keep looking at her. He wanted to understand why a woman who had everything looked at him like he mattered. A week later, Vivienne was gone. No order, no note, no trace. He tried not to let it bother him. He had bills, rent, and Kinsley's school forms to worry about. But it did bother him, more than he wanted to admit. 2 months passed. Then one morning, Travis was rushing through the lobby, late for his shift, when the hotel manager stopped him. "Mr. Alden, there's a woman asking for you in the executive lounge." He frowned. "I'm not scheduled there." "She said it was personal." He followed the manager, and when the doors opened, there she was. Vivienne, in a sharp navy suit, heels like weapons, and a look in her eyes that made his heart stop. "You're here," he breathed. She smiled. "I've been looking for you." He stepped back. "You disappeared." "I had to go back to New York. My company was finalizing a merger." His brain stalled. "Your company?" She sighed. "Travis, I'm the CEO of Cade International." He blinked. "Wait, Cade, like the tech firm Cade." She nodded. "Yeah, that one." He stared at her stunned. "You're a billionaire." She winced. "Technically, yes." He let out a laugh, stunned. "And you were hanging out with a broke single dad from Jersey delivering you pasta." She stepped closer. "You're not just a broke dad, you're kind, real, you made me laugh when I wanted to quit everything." Her voice softened. "I didn't fall for what you do, I fell for who you are." Travis didn't know what to say. He looked down, then back up at her. "Why come back?" Her voice cracked. "Because I couldn't stop thinking about you, about Kinsley, about how it felt to just be with someone who saw me as Vivienne, not as a CEO." He stepped forward. "You're saying you want." She nodded. "I want to know what this is, if you feel it too." He didn't answer right away, just reached for her hand. "Come meet Kinsley." Vivienne's eyes lit up. That's when he realized this wasn't some game. She wasn't slumming it or bored. Vivienne Cade, billionaire CEO, was standing in a hotel lounge asking him to let her into his life. And for the first time in years, Travis felt like maybe, just maybe, he wasn't alone anymore. Travis adjusted the collar of his only pressed shirt as he rang the buzzer outside Vivienne's townhouse in the West Village. Kinsley clutched his hand tightly, her pink backpack bouncing against her knees as she shifted excitedly. He glanced down at her. "You remember what I said, right?" She nodded solemnly. "Be polite, no running, no asking for snacks without saying please." He brushed a curl from her forehead. "That's my girl." The front door opened with a quiet click, revealing Vivienne not in a suit this time, but in jeans and a soft black sweater, barefoot on the polished wood floor like she just stepped out of a quiet Sunday morning instead of a skyscraper boardroom. "Hi," she said, eyes flicking down to Kinsley, who immediately stepped halfway behind Travis's leg. "She's shy at first," he explained. Vivienne knelt down, her expression warm. "Hi, Kinsley, I'm Vivienne. I made cookies, but I need a professional taste tester. Think you can help?" Kinsley's eyes lit up. "Do they have sprinkles?" "Rainbow ones," Vivienne said with a wink. As Kinsley dashed inside, Travis followed more cautiously, taking in the space. The interior was intimate but elegant, no marble, no cold modern angles. Soft lighting, books on real wooden shelves, a piano in the corner. It didn't feel like the kind of place a billionaire lived. It felt like someone had chosen every piece with care. "You don't live in that hotel?" he asked, watching Kinsley disappear toward the kitchen. Vivienne closed the door behind him. "Hate hotels. Only stay there when I'm traveling for deals or when I need to be close to Midtown." He stuffed his hands in his pockets. "This place, it's different than I expected." She leaned lightly against the banister. "What did you expect?" "I don't know, something colder, less you." Her mouth curved slowly. "I like things that feel lived in. Don't show this side of my life to many people." He nodded, glancing toward the kitchen as the distant sound of giggles echoed down the hall. "I'm guessing the cookies are a hit." "Your daughter has strong opinions about the correct sprinkle to cookie ratio," Vivienne said, and something soft passed between them, an unspoken recognition that this wasn't temporary. They stepped into the kitchen together. Kinsley sat on a stool at the island, munching on a cookie with rainbow sugar dust on her nose. She looked up at her dad with a grin. "These are better than Miss Carla's." "Miss Carla's going to be offended," Travis said, pretending to frown. Vivienne placed a glass of milk in front of Kinsley. Who's Miss Carla? Our neighbor, he said. She picks Kinsley up from school when I have evening shifts. She's 82 and runs the building like a general. Vivienne's laughter was genuine. I need a Miss Carla in my life. Kinsley looked between them. Are you my daddy's friend? Vivienne crouched to her level. I'd really like to be. Is that okay with you? Kinsley studied her, then gave a decisive nod. You make good cookies. That's important. Vivienne looked up at Travis, something quiet and tentative in her gaze. He gave a slight nod. He didn't have answers yet, but he wasn't running. Later, after Kinsley was settled in the den watching a movie, Travis and Vivienne sat on the terrace with mugs of tea between them, the city lights stretching endlessly beyond. So, he said, what's the real reason you came back? I told you. I mean the full reason. She hesitated, setting her mug down. I was in Paris the week after I left. I was sitting in this ridiculous meeting at a castle-turned-conference center, and I realized, couldn't remember the last time I'd laughed without calculating who was in the room. And then I thought about you, about how you never asked for anything from me, about how you talked to me like I was just someone. He leaned forward, arms on his knees. You're not used to that. Not in years. They sat in silence for a moment, the noise of the city drifting up from below. I don't know what this is yet, he said quietly. I've got a lot on my plate, and my life isn't exactly simple. I don't want simple, she said. I want real. He looked at her, uncertain. You're not afraid of getting messy. I live in messes. I just usually pay people to clean them up for me. He laughed under his breath. I don't have much to offer you, Vivienne. That's not true. You have everything I don't. He studied her face in the dim light. You sure about this? She reached over and placed her hand over his. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. The next morning, she showed up at Kinsley's school with a bouquet of sunflowers for her teacher, claiming she was just picking up a book Kinsley forgot. Travis watched her from the schoolyard, stunned. Later that week, she invited them both to a small outdoor jazz concert in the park. She brought a blanket, a thermos of hot chocolate, and a new pair of purple earmuffs for Kinsley, because it's supposed to be windy. Travis didn't ask how she knew that. He started noticing the little things. How she always asked him first before doing anything involving Kinsley. How she never made him feel out of place. How she never once discussed money around him, even when it was obvious she was covering things he couldn't. One night, as he tucked Kinsley into bed, she whispered, Is Vivienne going to be my new mommy? He froze. What makes you say that, sweetheart? She holds your hand sometimes, and she brings me my favorite crackers from the store. He kissed her forehead. Vivienne is special, but we're still figuring things out, okay? Kinsley nodded, already drifting off. Okay, I like her. Travis stepped into the hallway, heart heavy with something he hadn't let himself feel in years. Hope. Downstairs, Vivienne was waiting, curled into the corner of his old couch with a mug of peppermint tea. She looked up when he entered, and he saw it again, that quiet question in her eyes, that invitation. He sat beside her. I'm scared, he said honestly. Me too, she whispered. And still, they didn't let go. Travis stood frozen in the middle of the art gallery, staring at the massive canvas in front of him. Thick, wild strokes of crimson and shadow swept across the frame like a storm that couldn't decide which way to crash. It was loud, chaotic, and oddly beautiful, just like the last few weeks of his life. This one's called Midnight Collision, Vivienne said beside him, her voice low. The artist painted it after walking away from a jet that crash-landed in the tundra. Travis turned his head slowly. You brought me here to look at trauma on canvas. She gave a quiet laugh. No, I brought you here because I wanted to see what you'd say. That it looks like someone spilled wine during a tantrum. That's exactly what I hoped you'd say. They moved on to the next piece. Vivienne's hand brushed his, but she didn't take it. They hadn't defined anything. Not publicly, not even between themselves. But he could feel the weight of it, what they were building. It was fragile, strange, and real in a way he didn't know how to name. He looked around. The gallery was small, tucked in a side street in Tribeca, with tall ceilings and no labels on the walls. Nothing told you what to think. You had to decide for yourself. "Why this place?" he asked. "My brother owns it," she said, then added. "He doesn't know I'm here." "Why not?" She hesitated, then stepped closer to a painting of a woman walking into fog. "Because I didn't want to hear him ask why I'm bringing someone like you into my life." Travis froze, then looked at her. "Someone like me." "I didn't mean." "No, I get it." He folded his arms. "You haven't heard that before, from people who think I'm lucky to even breathe in the same room as you." Vivienne turned toward him, her expression tight. "I didn't say that. He would." "And you didn't think I could handle it?" "No," she said quickly. "I didn't think I could." He let the silence stretch between them, the air thick with something heavier than paint. "I'm not ashamed of you, Travis." "That's not what I'm hearing." "Then let me say it differently." Her voice softened, but her gaze stayed steady. "I've built my entire career keeping people out. I don't do dinners with family. I don't take vacations. I don't let anyone close. Not because I don't want to, but because I've spent years convincing myself I don't need to." He didn't speak. Vivienne stepped closer. "Then you showed up with your daughter and a tray of food and a look that said you didn't care about any of the armor I wear. And it scared me." He looked away. "You think I don't get scared too?" "I know you do, but you still show up. For Kinsley, for me, I'm trying to do the same." He met her eyes again. Something in them flickered not apology, but truth. "I don't need you to hide me from your life," he said. "If we're doing this, I need to know I'm not just the secret you visit in the quiet corners." "You're not." "Then prove it." She nodded slowly. "I will." That weekend, she invited him to a fundraiser galacade, International's annual education initiative benefit. "It's black tie," she warned. "And it's going to be full of people who assume you're a hedge fund manager or a venture capitalist." "Should I pretend I am?" he asked. "No, I want you to be exactly who you are, even if it makes them uncomfortable." He showed up in a suit he borrowed from a friend at the hotel. It was a little tight in the shoulders, but it was clean and pressed. He brought a gift for her driver, a vintage baseball cap the man had once mentioned missing from his collection. Vivienne met him at the car, wearing a sleek silver gown that looked like it had been sewn from moonlight. She didn't blink when she saw the suit. She just reached up, adjusted his tie gently, and whispered, "You clean up dangerously well." The ballroom was a blur of crystal chandeliers, champagne flutes, and conversations filled with names and numbers Travis had never heard in real life. He recognized a few CEOs he'd seen on magazine covers, a senator whose face graced the evening news, and a famous designer who complimented Vivienne's heels in passing. At their table, her assistant leaned over and said, "Shall I introduce Mr. Alden as your—" "My partner," Vivienne said firmly. "That's all they need to know." No one questioned it. Later, when the speeches ended and the music started, she pulled him onto the dance floor. He hesitated, but she didn't give him a choice. Her hand slid into his, her other resting on his shoulder like it belonged there. "I haven't danced since high school," he murmured. "Good, then you can't be worse than me." He laughed, and for a moment the room disappeared. It was just her stepping into his rhythm, him adjusting to hers, both of them learning how to move together in a world that had never made room for this kind of story. As the music slowed, she leaned in, her lips brushing his ear. "I've never wanted to risk everything before." He pulled back enough to see her face. "For what?" "For something I didn't build, something I can't control." He held her tighter, then stopped trying. Vivienne didn't answer. She just pressed her forehead to his, and in that quiet moment, surrounded by wealth and power and expectations, they became something neither of them could define but neither wanted to lose. After the gala, as the car pulled up to his apartment building, she didn't ask to come in. She kissed him softly, lingering like she didn't want to let go, then whispered, "Tomorrow, I'm flying to Zurich for 3 days. Board meetings." He nodded, trying not to let the disappointment show. Her eyes searched his. "Will you wait?" "For 3 days, I've waited longer for decent coffee." She smiled, then added, "There's something I want to show you when I get back." "What is it?" "A part of my life I've never shared with anyone, not even my board, not even my family." He raised an eyebrow. "Should I be nervous?" "No," she said, "but I might be." As her car drove off, Travis stood on the sidewalk, watching the taillights vanish into the city haze. He didn't know what she meant, but he knew this. Whatever part of her life she was ready to show him, he'd meet her there. No matter what it was. 3 days stretched longer than any Travis had known. Between double shifts and helping Kinsley with her science fair volcano, he kept checking the clock, wondering what Vivienne meant when she said there was something she wanted to show him. He hadn't heard from her since the night of the gala. No calls, no visits, just silence wrapped in his own spiraling thoughts. But he didn't reach out. Not because he didn't want to, but because he knew Vivienne well enough now to understand she needed space. On the 4th morning, just after Kinsley left with Miss Carla for her art class, he returned to their apartment and found a black envelope slipped under the door. No name, no return address, just a wax seal in the shape of a keyhole. He opened it with shaky fingers. Inside was a single sentence, "Come find me." Beneath it, an address in Soho. Travis had never been to this part of the city. The building was tucked between a minimalist clothing boutique and a florist with roses that looked like they'd never seen dirt. He buzzed the suite number written on the card, and the door clicked open a second later. A quiet hallway led to a large steel door. When it opened, Vivienne stood on the other side, wearing a dark green blouse buttoned to her throat and wide-legged trousers. Her hair pulled back in a way he'd never seen before, sleek, controlled, almost too polished. "This is mine," she said, stepping aside. The space didn't look corporate. It was a loft, but unlike the townhouse or the penthouse, it held no warmth. One wall was filled with blueprints and concept sketches. Another had a long shelf of prototypes, gadgets, and devices he didn't recognize. The far corner had a workstation surrounded by 3 large monitors, all glowing with code. "This is where Cade International started," she said. "I built my first patent on that table." Travis stepped inside slowly. "You built it alone?" "The first few years, yes. I didn't want anyone to know it was me. I used a shell name for the filings. My father didn't think could run a lemonade stand, let alone a tech firm. I wanted to prove him wrong." He walked over to the table, careful not to touch anything. "Why bring me here?" She leaned back against the brick wall, arms folded. "Because no one else knows about this space. Not my board, not my family. No press. This is where I go to remember who I was before the suits and the quarterly reports." Travis looked at her. "Why hide it?" "Because the girl who worked here didn't think she'd ever be enough. She was just trying to claw her way out of a world that never made room for her. And somewhere along the way, I became someone people respected, but not someone people really knew." He stepped closer, voice quiet. "You let me see her." She looked at him, something raw behind her eyes. "I want to give her a chance to be loved." Travis didn't answer. Instead, he reached up and cupped her face, brushing his thumb gently across her cheekbone. Then let her have it. She closed her eyes for a moment, then leaned into his touch, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm scared of what comes next." He smiled softly. "That makes two of us." Vivienne drew in a breath, then stepped back and walked over to a sleek black box on the work table. She opened it and pulled out a thin silver key attached to a leather cord. "I bought a place," she said. "It's not a penthouse. It's not even in Manhattan. It's a house with a yard, a tree in the front. I want you and Kinsley to come see it." He blinked. "You bought a house?" "I've never lived in one. Figured maybe we could make it ours." He stared at her. "You're serious?" "As a merger filing." She held the key out to him, hands steady. "Come with me." He took the key, fingers brushing hers. "Let me check with Miss Carla." 2 days later, they stood in front of a 2-story colonial in Westchester, with white shutters and ivy curling up the porch columns. Kinsley ran ahead, squealing as she discovered the backyard swing and a garden bed already blooming with tulips. Vivienne watched her from the porch, arms wrapped around herself. "I didn't know if she'd like it." "She loves it," Travis said. "She already named the swing Benny." Vivienne let out a soft laugh. "That's a solid swing name." They stood in silence, watching Kinsley spin in slow circles. "I don't want to rush this," Travis said quietly, "but also don't want to let it go." She turned to him. "Then let's stop pretending we're waiting for the perfect moment. We've been in it this whole time." He stepped closer. "I don't have money, Vivienne. I can't match what you bring to the table." "I don't want you to," she said. "I just want you next to me." When he kissed her, it wasn't flashy or desperate. It was steady, earned, the kind of kiss that felt like a promise quietly kept. A month later, they moved in. Vivienne took mornings off for the first time in her career, walking Kinsley to school with Travis, stopping for coffee at the corner cafe where the barista already knew their names. Her board was shocked, but she didn't explain. She didn't need to. Travis found work with a local catering company that let him pick his own hours. He still wore that old pressed shirt from the hotel sometimes, just to remind himself how far he'd come. Not in money, but in trust, in something he never thought he'd find again. On a Saturday afternoon, while Kinsley painted birdhouses in the yard, Travis stood under the porch awning with Vivienne, watching storm clouds gather in the distance. "You ever think about where we started?" he asked. She leaned against his side. "Every day." He looked down at her. "I delivered you a tray of strawberries." "Anna gave you a cookie," she murmured. "The rest is history." As the first raindrops hit the porch railing, Vivienne stepped into the yard, arms lifted like she was daring the sky to open. Travis shook his head, laughing. "You're going to get soaked." "Then come get soaked with me." He ran out after her, and they spun under the rain, laughing as Kinsley joined them, shrieking with joy. No cameras, no board meetings, no penthouses. Just the three of them. Together. Exactly where they were meant to be. Vivienne's heels clicked across the stone path as she walked beside Travis through the botanical conservatory. A private event had been canceled at the last minute, and she'd surprised him with the keys she'd quietly arranged through a friend on the board. It was after hours, and the massive glass dome glowed softly around them, the air thick with the scent of jasmine, gardenias, and something sweeter he couldn't quite place. "You've been quiet all evening," she said, her gaze on the lantern-lit trail ahead. Travis ran a hand along the edge of a bench carved from driftwood, just thinking. Vivienne stopped walking. "About." He turned to face her, his expression unreadable. "About how fast everything's changed. For the better, yeah, but it's still a lot." She didn't move any closer, giving him space. "I can handle a lot, but can't read your mind." "I know." He exhaled and stepped onto the grass, pacing slowly between two low hedges. "I've been offered a partnership. The catering company wants to open a full restaurant. They want me to run it." Her eyes lit up. "That's incredible." "It's in Boston." The air shifted. Vivienne's voice lowered. "You'd have to move." He nodded. "They'd help with relocation. It's a real opportunity, stability, a future." "And Kinsley." "They offered to help with schools, housing, everything." She swallowed hard but kept her voice even. "When would you need to decide?" 2 weeks. Vivienne looked away, her hands tightening at her sides. "Is this your way of leaving gently?" "No," he said, stepping closer. "It's my way of telling you I need to know what we are, not in theory, in practice." Her brows furrowed, but she didn't flinch. "You think I'd let you go that easily?" "I think you've got a life built in New York. A company, responsibilities, and I don't want to be the reason you give up everything." She crossed her arms. "You're not a reason, you're the choice I keep making." "I can't ask you to follow me." "You didn't. I'm deciding because I want to." He stared at her stunned. "You'd leave all of this?" She let out the smallest laugh. "You think I've never stepped away from a deal before? I've walked away from acquisitions worth more than most people make in a lifetime. But I've never once walked toward something that made me feel like this." Travis looked down, overwhelmed. "I thought maybe I was just a detour, a story you'd tell once the novelty wore off." Vivienne stepped into him then, her fingers brushing his jaw, lifting his chin until he met her gaze. "You're not a detour, you're the destination." He blinked, and his voice cracked as he replied, "That's the corniest thing I've ever heard." She smiled. "I've been saving it." He kissed her then, deep and certain, under a canopy of glass and blooming night orchids. Her hands gripped the lapels of his jacket like she couldn't bear to let him drift. When they broke apart, their foreheads rested together, breath mingling in the humid air. Vivienne whispered, "We'll figure it out." They did. The house in Westchester went on the market. Kinsley got accepted into a private arts magnet school in Cambridge. Vivienne stepped down as CEO and appointed her longtime COO to lead the company. She retained ownership, but without the daily demands. For the first time in her adult life, she picked where she lived based on something other than a market. They moved into a restored brownstone outside Boston with wide windows, creaky stairs, and a fire pit in the backyard. Vivienne furnished the study with worn leather chairs and converted the sunroom into an indoor herb garden. Travis painted the kitchen himself, and Kinsley insisted on a glitter wall in her bedroom, which he begrudgingly agreed to build. The restaurant opened 3 months later. Travis named it Vive's Table, despite her protests. "Too sentimental," she'd said. "Too bad," he'd replied. It became a local favorite within weeks, filled with warm lighting, reclaimed wood, and a rotating seasonal menu that always featured a dessert inspired by whatever Kinsley was currently obsessed with. The first was a strawberry tart shaped like a unicorn. Vivienne didn't miss boardrooms. She started volunteering at Kinsley's school, helped launch a tech literacy program at the local library, and began mentoring young female founders through a nonprofit. Her days were full, but never frantic. One chilly October evening, they gathered with friends and neighbors in the garden behind the restaurant. String lights danced above them, and a jazz quartet played softly in the corner. Kinsley darted between tables with a plate of mini cupcakes, announcing her favorites with dramatic flair. Vivienne sat beside Travis at a long table, their hands laced beneath the linen. She leaned in as he poured her a glass of wine. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked. "The hotel, not even a little." She tilted her head. "The city." He thought about it, watching the way Kinsley laughed in the distance, cheeks flushed with joy. "No, everything I want is right here." The next morning, as sunlight filtered through their bedroom window, Vivienne turned to him, bare feet tucked under the sheets, her voice soft. I've been thinking. He stretched, dangerous. Marry me. He sat up slowly. Wait, you're proposing. Why not? He blinked. I didn't get you a ring. I already have everything. He laughed, pulling her into him. You're serious. As a merger filing. They married in the backyard under a canopy of white blossoms and laughter. Kinsley wore a flower crown and declared herself ring queen instead of flower girl. Miss Carla flew in with a new walker wrapped in purple ribbon and gave a toast that made everyone cry. There were no limousines, no press, just a wooden arch, a string quartet, and two people who had once collided in a hotel hallway and changed each other's lives forever. That night, after everyone had gone and the stars blinked softly overhead, Travis carried Vivienne across the threshold of their home. She laughed against his shoulder. This is wildly impractical, she said. You're wearing heels. I'm doing the heavy lifting for once. He set her down in the kitchen, where a single candle flickered on the counter beside a plate of leftover cake. She looked around, then back at him. This is what I never knew I wanted. He kissed her temple, then let's never let it go. And they didn't, not ever.